What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. On today's episode, we're going to talk about this comment that the Bulls are going to have a more random offense and how that could bode well for the talent overall on this team. We're going to get into that, plus some more, right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, we are a little over 24 hours away from Chicago Bulls basketball. Now, as I've said in yesterday's episode, do not expect to see the Bulls starters out there in this initial preseason game. I know a lot of us, and me included, right, we're excited to see, hey, Zion, Patrick Williamson, and we may see some Zion Williamson just considering how long he was out of basketball. But don't expect to see a lot of the Bulls starters. I do think that if we do get any of them, it's going to be very limited minutes. But if you look at preseason so far, there have not been a lot of starters played in it as of yet. So we may not see a lot of the Bulls starters, but as I said in yesterday's video, that could bode well for this roster as we have so many players that we're trying to figure out how they're going to fit into the rotation, if they're going to have roles on this team, seeing some of Marco, seeing some of Dalen Terry, probably see some of Io as well, a lot of Derrick Jones Jr. We're going to see those type of players, but we may not see a lot of like DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic. We may not see a lot of those players. And so with that being said, it's going to allow the coaching staff to really take a look at who's ready to go, what roles, as far as with the bench, probably see some Kobe White as well, what improvements he's made to his game. But I don't know if we're going to see maybe the matchup that some of us were initially hoping that we're seeing, especially when we heard that this game was going to be announced on TNT. Now, could that change because it's a nationally televised game? Yeah, it could. But I know I can only speak for me, and for me, like, regardless of what it is, I'm excited to get Chicago Bulls basketball back. I'm glad to be able to do the post game, the halftime hangouts, all that again, and interact with you guys. So regardless of who's on the court or not, whether it is we do see some of the starters or we just see only the bench players and like Kostas Antetokounmpo, the two-way players, things like that, I'm still excited because it's going to give us some things to break down, maybe even more so about their games and where they could fit on the Chicago Bulls, either the G League team, a two-way contract, things like that. So it's still going to give us enough to kind of look at and break down, and what does that mean for the Chicago Bulls season. But let me know down below, how excited are you to get Chicago Bulls basketball back, even if it does mean we're not seeing the starters in that initial preseason game? Let me know all that down below. But all right, let's go ahead and get to the main topic for today. And so in an interview, Zach LaVine said that, direct quote about the Chicago Bulls offense coming up, he says, "I think it's going to be a little bit more random, be in different spots other than pretty much last year where teams knew exactly where we were and could set the defense every play." That is a level of awareness that I'm happy to hear from the Chicago Bulls team and the coaching staff. That means the coaching staff has realized that their schemes were very predictable at some point. We know the isolation ball was very heavy and things like that, and how that played a part in, especially down the stretch when you didn't have the shooting options, and a lot of our Zach was hobbled, Lonzo was out, Alex Caruso was out for a long period of time. He was probably our best off the ball movement player on offense and defense. So hearing that the Bulls are going to be a little bit more random, right? Less stagnant, less predictable, less one-dimensional, whatever you want to call it there. The fact that they're going to do that is going to bode well for the Chicago Bulls team. When you look at the fact that we don't have a lot of players that can take people off the dribble. We have Zach, we have DeMar. Outside of that, everybody else needs offense kind of set up for them. Vooch in a little bit less of a manner. Patrick Williams, we know that he can do some ball handling, and he is more dangerous with the ball in his hand, but we have yet to see how Billy Donovan and the coaching staff are going to utilize that in their scheme as well. But I think if the Bulls adopt more of a motion-based offense, more of an offense that is more random, that is less predictable, that you have players creating space by coming off screens, always moving without the ball. If this team gets to that point, because while you don't have some of the knockout shooters like some of the other teams do, we do have players with a bunch of offensive upside. Patrick Williams, overall, 50% shooter in his career so far. Basically, that is a great percentage to have. Io DeSumo, we've seen what he did in Illinois and what he can be as a scorer. Creating more space for him does that. Getting more in the lanes. Kobe White, the best, second best off-screen and off-dribble shooters that we have on this team. If he's more consistent, being and working in more randomness to that offense and getting everybody moving and going when you don't have players that, especially like we have one back to the basket player that can do that in Nikola Vucevic. Andre Drummond isn't really a back to the basket player. He's more off lobs, pick and rolls, rebounds, things like that. But he has a little bit of that game as well. If you get everybody moving and creating that space, creating those opportunities, that's going to open up more mid-range. It's going to open up more on the outside. It's going to open up a lot for the Chicago Bulls in that area. So that random offense that's talked about and that was mentioned by Zach LaVine in this interview is going to do well if they can execute it. It's going to be, this coaching staff is going to have to be in everybody's ear. Why weren't you moving? Move. Get your man out of positions. When you stand stagnant and still, and one of the things, especially when you're a high isolation team, is that it allows the other team to sit in passing lanes. So when things did break down for DeMar or Zach, and they did have to pass the ball because there was no motion or movement on the offensive end of the ball, we got turnovers. They were able to disrupt certain things. So the level of awareness with this team, and that's one of the bets of continuity, is how you need to adjust your system to things that happened or went left last season. So the Bulls being able to do that, them looking at that, making those adjustments, making those moves, cannot do anything but bode well for this team and this offense overall. And I think players like Patrick Williams are going to benefit from it. Players like Kobe White are definitely going to benefit from it. And so as long as these players are on the team, Javonte Green as well, give Javonte a little bit of space with his slashing ability and things like that. Those type of things make those players, while we didn't make some of the knockdown moves or acquisitions that some of us wanted us to make, this team to make, when you do those type of things, it allows your offense to get even more out of it. The Bulls averaged 111 points last season, but they had a negative point differential. By being able to execute better on that offensive ball, get more easy shots in that case, we can see the Bulls' efficiency in the offense go up and that overall scoring. Now, one thing that we haven't heard a lot about is what they're going to do on the defensive end of the ball. So we need to see some of that as well. I love hearing things about the offense. This Bulls team really didn't have a huge trouble scoring. They did down the stretch, but it's good that they're working on that. But how is this defensive scheme gonna change as well for the Chicago Bulls? We know, hey, that drop defense and stuff with Vooch. Now, Billy Donovan came out and said that they weren't actually supposed to be playing drop defense. Vooch wasn't where he was supposed to be. Those type of adjustments, we need to make those type of adjustments as well going forward to be a more dangerous team. Listen, Lonzo, like I said before, isn't walking through that door anytime soon. So we can't pin everything on that. Our defense cannot wait for Lonzo Ball to be back around to be effective. We just can't wait on that. So how the Chicago Bulls team goes in, makes these type of adjustments into next season is going to be huge for the Chicago Bulls. And I hope, for one, that this random quote-unquote offense does wonders for the Chicago Bulls in getting more easy buckets and seeing what things to do. But the defense can't be forgotten either. Let me know what you guys think about everything down below. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and or voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all. Bulls basketball is back, baby. We go back in this mug tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.